All right, hi everybody. My name is Valentine, and I've decided to start this channel because to teach people whatever it is that I learned from training in coaching the C420 for I don't know, easily over 16 years. Um, the reason I want to start this channel is honestly, I have nothing better to do with my life, and so that's a pretty good reason right off the bat. And yeah, at the end of the day, I met a lot of success in doing this. Um, and so I just want to share pretty much everything that I learned and everything I'm continuing to learn for you guys for free. So the first thing I want to talk about is how kind of I approach. Oh, actually, I should probably share a little bit more about myself, which I'm sure I'll share more and more as we go along. I So I'm a C420 sailor. I coached in Canada the back-to-back C420 national and Canadian champions um, for 2 years in a row before I stopped coaching completely. Um, During that time, now I know, like, obviously one of the I feel like one of the first things I want to address is oftentimes, now this may or may not be true, but I feel like oftentimes the moment we bring up the national championship in Canada, that often can put like a certain light on, well, it's like people say, like, once you go to the US, that's when you know what your standings actually are. Um, we were fortunate enough to race against the top US sailors at the Canadian Championship because it's a Triple Crown event. So that would always attract the top Canadian, American sailors, who my sailors also beat, which is why my sailors are the ones that won that event of the Triple Crown. My sailors have also gone, and also I just want to say my sailors were teenagers, and they still are. Although I don't coach sailing anymore, I take care of horses now, but um, they have gone on to represent Canada at two world championships. One of them, which was honestly kind of a interesting turn of events, was one of my sailors who was 16 at the time. They've had the inaugural, I don't really know exactly what it is, but there was a world championship in Oman in 2025, where it was the very first time where it was a world championship for sailors who were blind, which, I had no idea how that was going to work. And so the Canadian team that they sent, this was on the Far East 48, which is, I don't know, I guess a kind of a well-known keelboat. On this Far East 48R, something like that, Far 48R East, who gives a shit? Um, they had two blind sailors, and they needed two sighted sailors to, like, not, I mean, you're all starting on a start line. Obviously, somebody needs to be able to see. And so the skipper had to be blind, and the trimmer, the mainsail trimmer, had to be blind. And then you had two other sailors to kind of help man the boat and work as like tactician, and the other crew position. Now, one of my sailors was asked to be one of the sighted sailors on this inaugural world championship, during which they came third. And the cool thing is that they had never trained a single day. So the sailor who got sent was Paris, and he had never trained a single day with any of the people he went to Oman with. He had never been on that boat once in his entire life, but he was actually the top person on the list was actually Augustine, my other sailor, but he turned the opportunity down because he's making an actual movie. He's literally directing a movie right now. So he turned that down, and then the next option was my other sailor, Paris. So they sent Paris on a boat he had never been on in his entire life. He's not even a keelboat sailor. With sailors he had never sailed with, never even met, and was somehow expected to be part of this team in which two of them are blind. Anyway, and also the people who were showing up at these events were people who had trained together for years, and they came third. They came third in the world. Um, and then after that, Augustine and Paris, who are two of my sailors, got sent to represent, got sent to another world championship, this time the Lightning World Championship. Again, a boat they had never been on, that they had never trained on, and with someone they had never sailed with, and they came sixth. Although, to be honest, they should have won it. But, that's the reality. They had also literally not sailed for 2 years at this point. But they still got sent. So, all to all, what I'm trying to share is there is, I believe, some value to what I would like to share with you guys. Yeah, I believe there's some value of what I would like to share, and it's obviously everything, especially in everything we do. Sailing is no different. It's an ongoing thing, right? So what we think is true now is not really true. It's more like this is the best we know how to do it now, and that will change, and probably we'll learn how to do it better down the road as we put more time and training into it, right? But as a result of my experiences, this is pretty much me teaching you everything that I've learned so far. Now, the first thing, and I feel like this is very, very common, and I hoped that this was different in the US, because training in Canada, we always have this belief that like, the US, first of all, has a 12, well, not the whole US, but many parts of the US has a 12-month out of the year training sailing season, right? Whereas in Canada, we only really get to train, if you're super hardcore, 6 months out of the year. And then after that, you have to travel elsewhere. Like for example, for me, when I used to train, I would train obviously in Toronto, with regattas a little bit over the place, although we're lucky enough that one of the biggest regattas is in Kingston, which is only a few hours away. And then during the winter time, I would be training in Vermont in the snow, right? I would go skiing, and then in the same day I would go sailing. Um, Although that obviously wasn't that often. I think we only did that 1 or 2 times just to be able to say that we skied and sailed in the same day. But usually it was just sailing. And then obviously there was also had to be some travel to Europe, competitions in France and things like that. The US they're able to train 12 months of the year. So right off the bat, that's a huge bonus for them. Like, how are Canadians supposed to compete against anyone that can train 12 months out of the year? Whereas we can only train, close to 6 months. And if we want to extend to that, our cost goes through the roof because we have to start traveling. So right off the bat, there was always this idea that, we could never even compete with US teams because just time. If you have 2 times more time of training than I do, how am I supposed to beat you? Unless you're an actual idiot, or unless I'm like the greatest on earth, So, and the other thing is, we also felt there's so much, because there's 12 months out of the year of training, there's a lot more money that goes towards it, right? If there's a lot more money that goes towards it, you can attract a lot more talent to coach. And if there's a lot more people who sail, there's more competition, which means the quality of the coaching is higher, right? If you're from a country where there's only 10 people who sail compared to a country where there's 100 million people, obviously, okay, that's kind of an exaggeration. Whatever, 100 million people who sail, even if everything is exactly the same, the country of 100 million is going to win just because they have more competition. That's it, than the country that has 10 sailors. So that was another reason why we're like, as Canadians, we could never compete against the US. Because we're like, okay, well, they probably have much better coaching, mainly because their coaches get to be employed 12 months of the year. When I was a coach in Canada, the longest contract I could get would be 8 months. Yeah, the longest one would be like 8 or 9 months long. And during the off season, I would either have to travel or I would have to, just work odd jobs. Which is obviously not conducive to building like a very long-term, high-quality kind of coaching staff, right? Because there's a lot of turnover, right? It's not a stable job. So it's not like, yeah, you're fully employed here for the next 10 years or 5 years if you succeed and do well. It's more like it's only contract work, right? You work for a few months and you have to get another contract. So it's not conducive to allowing someone to build for a very long period of time. Although there are advantages, and I'll get to that, why there are a lot of advantages of the sailing season in Canada. Whereas in the US, if you get a job as a high performance racing coach, you can be in that position, first of all, 12 months out of the year for years. So obviously that's going to attract much higher caliber coaches, right? Because they would rather be like, yeah, I have a good job here that I can stay here for a few years, that's full time, 12 months of the year, than to work in a country where it's like, yeah, after 8 months you have to do something else, and then we'll give you another contract next year, but we won't give you contracts during the off season, right? So we had all these beliefs that, okay, they have much older coaches because their coaches are able to like actually build a life through that job. They have a lot more coaches because there's a lot more money, which attracts a lot more competition and a lot more training time. So we're like, anytime the US would come, we would get absolutely destroyed, which honestly was true for quite some time. Whenever American sailors would come up to Canada, there was no competition at all for them. And I remember when I started race coaching, that was very much the case. I remember my first year as a full-time, full-fledged, high-performance C420 race coach. Whenever U.S. teams came to our big Canadian regattas, Cork, the Canadian Championship, any Grand Prix event, and the Triple Crown events, it wasn't even a competition. It was the U.S. got all the top positions, and then even the best Canadian sailors were not even touching the American sailors. That actually changed, not to sound like an ass, but that honestly changed because of what I was able to do with my race team. After coaching my race team for a few years, we just started winning everything, didn't matter, even against the Americans, in a way that was pretty spectacular. For example, we even had one regatta, the Canadian Championship, which again was a Triple Crown event. The Texas State Champion. Obviously they train off the Gulf. They have 12 months of the year of training, a lot of money, a lot of opportunity, great, all these competitions. Their coaches were like not, I'm 26 years old. This was back when I was like in my younger 20s. Their coaches were like in their 50s, they were hardcore people. They came and we destroyed them so badly that the team that came, the Texas State Champions, broke up that regatta. At that regatta, they broke up and and one of them even flew back to Texas before the regatta was over, because the extent to which my sailors beat them was so complete, which was not supposed to happen. When Americans come up to Canadian regattas, they come to get easy points for the Triple Crown. They just try to get their points. That way, when they finish the other Triple Crown events, which are North Americans and U.S. nationals in the U.S., they have a better opportunity of winning it, the whole thing. And then they came and competed against our sailors and were absolutely destroyed. And the same thing happened at Cork. We competed against one of the best, I think, one of the best. I think they came top 5 at U.S. Nationals. And they ended up coming 4th at the C420, or was it the I420? At the I420 Youth World Championship, 4th in the world. We actually, it came down to the last race, and unfortunately we lost through a tiebreaker. But it was neck and neck until the very last race, right? And these are sailors that train, again, 12 months a year. So clearly the system that we were able to develop was good enough to compete against the best sailors of the U.S. who had all these advantages against us. And one of the reasons why that's the case is because we were at such a disadvantage going into it as Canadian sailors. Because we were such at a disadvantage, we had no choice but to find ways to make up for that. Right? We had so many restraints on our ability to train and on how we could train that we had no choice but to find very, very creative ways to train in 1 month what other sailors would do in 6 months. And we did that very successfully. So over the course of this channel, we'll pretty much just share everything, how we approached everything, how we did everything, down to the technical, down to the theory. I don't have a whiteboard with me today, so today will probably not be a very theory based, although maybe I'll just use my hands, which, as you guys know, most coaching has to do, we just use our hands all the time. Okay, so the very first thing that I want to talk about, one of the advantages of training with a very limited, kind of limited space and limited time as a Canadian sailor, is you really have to focus on what matters, and everything that doesn't matter, you completely ignore, right? When you get to train 12 months of the year, all the time, through all seasons, you kind of have this relaxed idea that like there's so much time, time is on your side. You can train things the way that, I don't know, we're kind of brainwashed to believe it. Just like train a little bit of everything and blah, blah, blah. If you only had a fraction of that time, but you still want to compete against the people who have all the time in the year to do it, you have to ask yourself, okay, how do we maximize all our training? And I think this rule applies to almost everything. But if you look at your success in anything, in this case, sailing, 90% of your success probably comes down to just 10% of things that you have to do, right? Now, obviously, if you worked on every single aspect of sailing, like every single aspect of sailing, that would make you a complete sailor and you would improve in every way, and you'd be covering 100% of what you have to cover to win. But most of that, the 90% of what's responsible for winning, is really comes down to 10% of things. And we can talk to the basic stuff. Is, first of all, the thing that you spend the most of your time doing in a regatta is sailing in a straight line. Straight line, quote unquote. So I've seen so many coaches, and this is very true in Canada. I mean, I'm sure this is very true anywhere, but very true in Canada, where it's like they have 2 months of training, and I see them waste weeks doing mark roundings, which is the dumbest thing you could be spending your time on if you have very little time to improve, right? Unless you're at a point where everything is perfect and that's like the last thing, then sure, but that's not the case, right? Or people who focus on, I don't even know. I actually don't even know. But the dumbest things, and they'll go out in a day and they'll have 3, 4, 5 different drills in one day. It's like, what are you doing? Literally, what are you doing? Working on so many different skills at the same time, scattering your sailors' energies all over the place, and you're surprised. Well, actually, they're not surprised. I think the whole mindset of a lot of these coaches is not based on success because they don't even know how to succeed. If your goal was, I want to win, but you literally have no idea how to do that, your ability to win is 0, then the worst thing you can do for yourself is to say you want to win, right? Because if you say you want to win while you have 0 capacity to pull that off, then you're going to be an idiot all the time. Because you'll have a task that you fundamentally cannot achieve, right? That's like giving a fucking hammer to a monkey and expecting anything useful out of that, Like the level of frustration that monkey will achieve. Well, first of all, the monkey won't even fucking understand why you're giving him a hammer. But let's assume like the monkey kind of, what? Actually, monkeys are dumb. You guys get what I'm saying? Don't give a calculator to a fucking monkey. He's not gonna do math, So I feel like it's the same thing, and I'm not calling these coaches monkeys, but some of them kind of are, So it's like if you have a coach who understands deep down in his soul that he is like full on like an idiot. And he knows that all these sailors that are coming to him are like, oh my God, this coach who's going to teach me. He knows deep, deep down that's like, I literally am just going to hurt these kids. And when I mean that, I don't mean like physically, but I mean like I can't help these kids. But imagine what it would be like to admit that to yourself. when there's nothing you can do. Well, there is obviously a lot of things that you can do to fix that. But knowing yourself, you don't have the discipline to improve. You don't have the compassion to work on your blah, blah, blah. All these things you just don't have, which means you are just a complete and utter failure. But you can't make people know that. People cannot know that truth about you. So you have to create such a complicated training plan that sets up your sailors to fail. They will never succeed. But because you made a training plan that's complicated, they fundamentally are not able to see that. They fundamentally aren't able to see that it's the training plan and it's you as the coach that is making it impossible for them to win. And so you will never have to take responsibility for their failure, right? Why? Because, they failed because it's a complicated sport. They failed because of this. They failed because of that. Rather than they were actually never going to succeed in the first place. Like your sailors, you sent your sailors to me, they were never going to succeed. It was impossible. They were never going to win. Unless everyone that's in front of us ages out and we somehow just happen to win because everyone else is just too old for our category, which is often the case, right? That's why you'll see so much turnover in results at yacht clubs, right? 1 year it's this group, then it's a totally different group. There's no consistency really, and that's because it's usually whoever the oldest group is at that year, who's been spending the most years training, will win that year, and then that will usually be the year before they age out. And once they age out, the next oldest group will start winning, right? It'll never be like, oh no, whoever has this team, whoever has this kind of coaching always wins no matter what. Right? Or it's always the same people at the top competing, which is not the case. So a lot of these sailors or at least coaches are absolute monkeys. So they complicate their training plans so that they work on so many things to make it impossible for your sailors to improve on anything. All right. And the reason why this also protects the coach is because if you were to simplify things and you're like, hey, for the next 3 months, we will just do one thing. Just one thing, and that might be keeping the bow steady on an upwind. That's it. If you only focused on one thing, if you're a bad coach, your sailors will see right through you by day 2, if not day 1. Because they'll see to what extent, every time they meet a problem, they'll see to what extent you don't know what the solution is. Because the thing is, if you do the same thing over and over again, 8 hours a day for months at a time, you're going to meet a lot of problems to do with that one thing. And if you meet 100 problems, these kids are not stupid. These kids are not imbeciles, When you get, a lot of these kids are obviously polite and we'll be like, oh, thank you. Oh, no. But they know we're that was the most bullshit answer I've ever heard in my life. That makes no sense at all. And now maybe the first little bit, the illusion of you being the coach will be strong enough to convince them for them to be like, oh yes, that illusion does not last very long. And the reason it doesn't last very long is because the evidence of it is immediate. You can't hide well in a competitive setting. You can hide well when you work in HR, or you can hide well when you work in, I don't know, somewhere where nothing you do really matters. There's no vantage point to know where you are. You can't lie in competition, because if you're right, your results will improve. If you're right, you will start to win. If you're wrong, your results will not improve. And so sailors see that. They're like, my results are not improving, or they're not improving in a way that they should be. They're improving just because there's less people here, or because people aged out. It's not improving because my skills are actually improving more than everyone else around me. So the illusion gets broken down very quickly when you focus on one thing, right? Because if I were to tell a sailor, we're going to work on this one thing for a few months, and there's no improvement in their results when you've just focused on one thing, they're going to be like, oh, so you actually don't know what you're talking about. Because either we're focusing on the wrong thing, we're focusing on something that does no difference at all, in which case they're like, okay, my coach is an idiot. We spent the last 3 months doing something that doesn't actually affect race results that well. Or you just know so little about what you're teaching that doesn't matter how much time you spend on it, you're not going to improve, because every mistake you meet, you're like, you have to make up a reason on how to make it better, So kids will see through these coaches right away. And these coaches know that. Maybe not consciously, but subconsciously they know that, which is why they can't do that, which is why they have to make training plans all over the place. Hey, today, guys, working upwind boat speed. Tomorrow, we're going to work on tacking. The next day, we're going to talk about tactics, then starts. This, you never give the opportunities of sailors to get good enough in one field to meet enough problems to actually break through the next level. You always keep them at this shit level the whole time, right? And so because you create so much confusion, the sailors can't really see through your illusion as well. Although some of them do. But even me, like, I didn't see through the illusion until I became a coach. When I became a race coach and I would get into these positions where sailors would ask me questions, and I was a good racer. You know, I remember I would get awards for like the best racer from whichever yacht club I was representing. I was like one of those racers. I just podiumed at every regatta I went to, pretty much. You know. And I remember it's only when I became a coach and I was like, what the fuck have my coaches been teaching me? Like, people are asking me questions. Or I'm in a situation, I'm looking at a boat and I'm like, there's something wrong here, but I actually don't know what it is. And it would be really basic. It would be surprisingly basic stuff. And then I would go like, oh my God. Wow, my coaches were dicks. How is it believable that they didn't teach me this? Because then when I found out for myself, I was like, this was so simple. The only way, and I had coaches who had like, I had Olympic coaches. So, who clearly had it out for me though, you know, and we can go over that some other time. So yeah, so again, so your focus should be on one thing and one thing only. And let's focus on the few things, and obviously there's a few things you can come down to that represents that 10% that leads to 90% of, you know, improvement in results. First thing is, let's look at just the race itself. Most of the race, you know, if we look at the race as an hour or an hour and a half, let's just say an hour for the easy stuff. The mark roundings represent maybe 2-3 minutes out of that 1 hour. So clearly we should not be working on the thing that's 2-3 minutes of your whole race. Literally forget about mark roundings. And the other thing is like, oh, how can you forget about mark roundings? This, like, obviously you can point it out, you can mention it, and also you realize when you work on these other skills that actually matter, your mark roundings do improve, right? Because it's like if you get really good at roll tacking, right? So you get really good at roll tacking. A lot of what you improve on in a roll tack, you can apply to mark rounding. You don't actually have to spend hours and hours, days and days, weeks and weeks working on mark roundings, right? Honestly, the only time that working on mark roundings might be useful is if you're one of the fastest boats already. Like speed can always be improved, but you're already, like, you're not losing your race because you're slower than everyone else, right? If you're going around a regatta and you lost literally just because other people are faster than you in a straight line, gaining a boat length or a few boats off a mark rounding is not going to do anything because you're going to lose all of it as soon as you get in the upwind or the downwind and you start going a straight line because you're slower than everyone else, right? It's useless. So do not focus on mark roundings. What's the other thing? Honestly, things like jibing. Don't focus on jibing, okay? Because, again, you just don't jibe that often. Right? Like now, people are like, oh my God, but jibe is so important. Yes, of course. Trust me. When I coach these sailors, their jibes are insane. Like, our jibes are so good that if you got into a jibing battle with us, you would lose. Or we could outmaneuver anyone in the downwinds to get the inside lane of the mark rounding. I agree. But that was only after our boat speed was so fast that we were always rounding the windward mark in the top 5. Now your jibes matter because you're fighting. You know, you're not going to be that much faster. So you're fighting for positioning, for tactics, for pumping, all these things, right? But if you're not even getting to the windward mark in the top 5, who gives a shit how good your jibes are? Like, genuinely. If you get to the top mark in the mid of the fleet, why are you working on jibes? Because another thing that's important to know is if you round the windward mark mid-fleet or anywhere with a pack of boats, I don't even care how good your downwinds are. Well, actually, that's not true. If you're really good at downwinds, you can pull this off. But 99% of people, you are fucked. And the reason why that is, people don't really know a lot about this. Also, people try to pretend like they do. But they obviously don't because I watch them sail. Is when you are near a clump of boats, which you're always around a clump of boats when you're anywhere, top mid fleet, when you're not broken off, when you're not like gapped the mid fleet as the front, you're always rounding the mark with a lot of traffic. A lot of boat traffic literally lowers airspeed. There is so much friction. The air is being deflected and is creating so much friction in this large area because of all the sails and all the boats that the average wind speed literally decreases. Like, this is not a metaphor. It literally does. So if you're sailing through, let's say, 50 knots of just true wind, but then you round the windward mark and there's like 15 boats rounding at the same time, you're not sailing in 50 knots of true wind. The true wind, it might be, depending on where you are compared to these boats, but could be significantly less. Like maybe even less than 10 knots. Depending, and we can draw some drawings some other time to show you exactly distances and what kind of shapes will literally, you could be in some situations where you're in like less than 5 knots of boat wind if you're in a really bad spot, but you have to be really stupid to be in that kind of spot. So again, you're like, okay, I'm rounding mid-fleet. If only I was good at jibing. You're never catching up to the boats in front who are sailing in 50 knots of breeze while you're fighting for 10 knots of breeze, right? That's never going to happen, right? If that's the case, you should literally just either, have a high exit or jibe off the rounding and just get away from everyone, right? And you might only, and if you're all going off to the sides, in that case, you're probably only jibing once or twice. So you should not be focusing on jibes, okay? Okay, so we already put off we shouldn't do roundings, we shouldn't do jibes. Okay, let's talk about, I guess the other options would be tacking. Now, tacking, that is super important. Tacking is crucial. One, because there's a few reasons. One, if you get really good at tacking, it literally becomes like cheating. That's why in the rule book, there's a literal rule in the sailing rules of racing that says you are not allowed to tack repeatedly. And that would not be a rule unless there was a benefit of tacking repeatedly. If you're a good tacker and you're sailing in 5 knots of breeze, and you start tacking back to back to back, you can generate more apparent wind. Because you're increasing your boat wind, you can generate more apparent wind and literally just sail in more breeze than everyone else if you're a really good tacker. And you can get to the point where you exit tacks faster than you entered them. So obviously, tacking well is a huge cheat code and also takes advantage of shifts a lot more aggressively, right? You'll always have a lot more shifts on the upwind than the downwind, mainly because you spend more time on the upwind, right? The upwind is always a lot longer. There's a lot more distance traveled. It's not as much of a direct route, and it's slower, even though it feels faster because you're going into the wind. But ultimately, the downwinds will always be a lot shorter, a lot quicker. The upwinds are where you spend most of your race. So right off the bat, we know that most of the race is spent going upwind. So that should be the only thing you work on, like genuinely. Because here's the thing. If you get really good at the upwind and you, quote unquote, win the first upwind leg, the rest of the race is easy. Because the downwind, you're not fighting with other boats for breeze. You can just sail on your own wind. It's a lot harder to catch people on the downwinds than it is on the upwind. Like, the top boats can catch up anyone on the downwinds easily. Those are the top boats. Whereas when you're going on an upwinds, even the bad boats can beat you by accident, just by the nature of shifts sometimes. Sometimes you just don't get the shifts right. Your strategy's not right. So ultimately, what we should be focusing on is straight line boat speed, upwind, specifically upwind, and tacks. That's it. You should not be focusing on anything else. For in tow, the only time you should focus on something else is when you get to the point where you're just always as fast or faster on the upwind than everyone else. Once you're as fast or faster than everyone else in the upwind, and you're like, we're getting diminishing returns. You know, if we spend another 3 months on just upwinds, we're not improving by that much anymore. It's like smaller increments. Then you can start focusing on the next thing, which would honestly be jibes, you know, downwinds and jibes. And then once you do that, that's when you go into mark roundings, and then you get into like boat on boat tactics and things like that. Um, or you know, honestly, the order of that might be a bit different. But at the end of the day, what matters is you should only focusing on upwind boat speed and tacking. Starts, honestly, you don't even need to focus on starts because, like, that's one of those things where like the only time starts are challenging is when you have 100 boats on the start line. Okay, and the truth is, when you have 100 boats on the start line, there is nothing that trains you for 100 boat start line than just being on a 100 boat start line. That's it. There's no secret to it. If you have two training partners and you're practicing starts, you're wasting your time. Because the thing is, if you're going to a regatta where there's 10 of you, if you're messing up the start, that's because you're stupid. Well, if there's 10 boats, right? And if you're going to a regatta where there's 100 boats on the start line, which the Canadian Championship last back in 2024 had over 100 boats on the start line. It was pretty cool. It was pretty sick. And the only thing that prepares you for that is just actual regattas. That's why, honestly, I remember when I was training with my sailors, we would go to regattas every single weekend just because there's a lot you get to train in a regatta that you can't train in training. The main thing is start lines. You cannot recreate that chaos, the stress, the fear, the anxiety, the uncertainty, the doubt of a 100 boat start line unless you have like a lot of boats. It's literally impossible. Um, which I feel like is another downside of being a Canadian sailor because we have smaller fleets, we don't have as much of experience with these really big start lines, and so whenever we get to them, unfortunately, instead of being like, okay, we've done this for years, you know, every weekend for years we got good at it, it's more like we're in the learning process of while we're in it, you know, which is also an advantage because we'll be in a lot of regattas and we're using the regattas as training. Even if it's a national championship, the rate at which we learn and improve is a lot quicker because we understand the importance of everything, of every opportunity. So, yeah. So start lines, and again, if you're, you know, if you're really, let's say you talk about, oh, but what about acceleration off start line? Again, you're kind of working through that. What's acceleration of start line comes down to teamwork and communication and timing, which honestly you're working through roll tax. Roll tax is all about teamwork and communication and kind of moving in sync. So if you get really good at roll tax, your accelerations are getting really good as well. Okay? Because literally every roll tack is an acceleration, every single one. So if you get really good at accelerating out of a roll tack, you're going to get really good at accelerating off a start line. Now, obviously, you could work on specific start line things like crab walking, like pumping straight into the wind to close a windward gap. But like again, this is like such a small percentage of it that it's irrelevant compared to this does not matter if you're slow in a straight line. So your only focus should be sailing in a straight line and tacking. Okay, so now that we know that's the only thing you should be focusing on, your training plan every single day, genuinely, I'm not even kidding, should be hi, welcome, hi kids, blah, blah, blah. What are we doing today? Same thing as every day. We're going to go out there. We are going to all line up. We're going to start sailing a straight line. And then we're going to do tacking on the whistle. Nothing else. That's it. And then once there's too much disbursement, because again, you don't want to let people get too dispersed. Because if they get too dispersed, then they don't have the immediate feedback, right? If you're neck to neck with a boat and you made a mistake, you know right away. If you're very far apart from boats and you make a mistake, you can't tell. You can only really tell when you're really neck and neck. That's why a tuning partner is the most important thing. So, accelerate, start, literally go in a straight line. Nothing else. And tacking on the whistle. That way you're kind of hitting two birds with one stone. You're doing tacking on the whistle and you're doing straight lines, right? Just straight line boat speed. And then as soon as there's too much separation, find a way to bring everyone back together and then go again. And that's literally it. And your downtime should be the downwinds. Your upwinds just be go, go, go. You're screaming at them. You're giving them pointers while you're screaming. And it's the downtime is their downwind. When they sail downwind, that's when it's like they get to relax. You talk to them about that. You pretty much ignore the downwind completely, right? You get to relax. This is where because again, the upwind, they should be sweating. They should be going all out, 100%. And the downtime is sailing back downwind. And this is all also when you drive next to them and you have more one-on-one long conversations, right? If the downwind is 10 minutes, you can have a few minutes of just conversation with each sailor. Or if it's more like you feel like you're having conversations that would benefit everyone, you have everyone grouped together, and as you kind of drift downwind, you're all having conversations together, right? But the upwind, straight line boat speed, and attacking is the most important thing. That's literally all you should do. And also, here's a few things that are important for you to pull this off. You need to accept, and you need to be completely honest as a coach with your sailors that you are not perfect. Because now, like we talked about before, you're now putting yourselves in a position where they will face a lot of problems, like a lot of, when I mean problems, I don't mean like the boat's going to break apart. I mean like, when I do this, that was slower, but when I did that, that was faster. I don't really understand what I did. If you're in a position where it's like, I don't know. I don't know why, because you get into a lot of minutia. Your sailors have to understand that you are not God. You're not some world champion, and that you are creating a training plan that is to their benefit, but will break down the illusion that you have the answer to everything. And you need to bite that in the butt. You can't let them discover that for themselves, otherwise they'll stop respecting you right away. And if they stop respecting you, there's no improvement of any kind. No sailor is going to improve if they don't respect their coach, because nothing you say matters anymore, right? Everything you say is full of crap. Any advice you give is just you talking out of your ass trying to sound smart because you have to, otherwise you'll lose your job. They don't listen to you anymore. There's no respect of any kind. There's no even belief that you're a benefit to them. And think about it this way, how discouraging that is for these kids. A lot of these kids might say like, oh, I'm just here for fun, which is true. Or like, whatever. What they're saying is that I don't believe I can win. And so because I don't believe I can win, and I don't believe you can coach me to win, why set myself up for disappointment? These kids are not stupid, Kids are not, they are stupid, but they're also not stupid. These kids don't believe you can take them to a win. And so they believe that no matter what they do, they're not going to win. So, these are kids, teenagers. There's only so much anyone can take, right? You can't be striving for a goal all the time when the success is literally impossible, unless you're like a very specific type of person, which is not super common, right? That is not the common denominator. But literally every sailor you get, regardless of them saying, if you actually train them in a way where they see themselves actually improve, they'll light up. Because that's what they want. They want for people to respect them. They want people to like them. They don't want to be ashamed of themselves, right? And if you think about it, nobody wants to be a loser all the time. And even if you lose, people want to feel like they were a fighter. If you lose, you still want to have the respect of your competitors. You still want your competitors to come up to you and you're like, wow, you raced so well. That was so tight. Remember you did this, I did that, and that was crazy, and you could have got that. And you're still excited. Even your loss is a win because everyone respects you. Everyone likes you. They want to hang out with you. Hey, we're having a barbecue. You should come. And then we have story time. And you get to share. But if you're literally garbage, you lose all the time. There's never a time that you are in any way a threat because you have no skills. You're not having those fun memories. You're not having those around the fireplace or around the picnic table conversations. You're not screaming from across the boatyard, be like, I almost got you in that one. And there's none of that. You're just secluded. You're on your own. You're like a little loser. Do you want that for your sailors? Maybe you do. Some coaches actually do, unfortunately. But if you can make your sailors believe that they can have some of that, they can have this friendship from other people, not because we're all losers and we like Pokemon. It's like, no, because we're all here, we're all sailors, we're all very good competitors, and competing against each other is a lot of fun. We have a lot of good times competing against each other because it's competitive. So you have to help your kids do that, and they will help you as well be a better coach. Um, so again, one of the ways you set that up is by making sure you make it very honest about what you're trying to do. There is no you there is no limit to how honest you should be with your sailors because they'll see right through you, and also the results never lie. Anything you don't want to share will be reflected in their results, right? If you're not confident about your ability to help them improve, or you have all these issues and you don't want to acknowledge that, you don't have to, because they'll know once they start going to regattas with you that like, this coach isn't it. And so you're like, okay, well, what's the point of me admitting that? If I'm not it, why would I tell everybody that I'm not the shit, that I'm not the greatest? If that's just going to deteriorate the coach sailor relationship, if they're already going to find out anyway, and there's nothing I can do about it. Because I'm not randomly going to start learning as a coach. I don't have a coach anymore. Well, this is where that's also not true. First of all, they will have a lot more respect for you if you speak the truth with them always. All your sailors will respect you a lot more because you're treating them with respect. And I don't mean by respect as in like, oh my God, you're so wise. Look, you're still the coach. They're still the sailor. You still know more than they do, and they still have to respect you. But they'll respect the fact that you're more of a team, rather than you being like, hey, I'm God, I do no wrong, you do as I say, which everyone sees right through that. It's more like, we're a team. These are my failings. This is still my goal, though. My goal is still to improve. Let's do it all together. They'll be a lot more on board and have a lot more respect for you. Now, I'm saying there will be some challenges. You will mess up a few times. I'm not saying you do this perfectly, but it will be better outcome. But also, you're no longer by yourself, and you're no longer trying to fight a losing battle, right? Because if you acknowledge that you don't have the capacity to really improve them, then you're fighting a losing battle. It's just a question of time until they realize that. But if you acknowledge that, they're like, you know what, these are things I don't know for sure, but let's work on it together. This is no longer a losing battle. We have this goal together. I'm going to bring what I can bring to the table. And I'm sorry that I can't bring more, but this is what I am going to bring. And let's see what you bring to the table, and let's meet this goal together. Right? That's a much more exciting team to be part of for a sailor than to someone who listens to their delusional coach who leads to no improvement in results. So there's really no downside to any of this. Maybe the downside is to your fragile ego, but even then, I feel like that's stupid because that's just so stupid. That's just so dumb. Like, you have to be really stupid for that to be what stops you. Like, you have to be really quite an idiot. Yeah, you have to be dumb as fuck. Okay, so upwind boat speed. You need to be on calls at 3, right? Okay. So I guess we might as well start talking about exactly how we want to approach the training. So you should be focusing solely on upwind boat speed and tacking. Another thing you should be working on, and this is something that's super important, is another reason why sailors don't do very well is because they don't have respect for each other, right? And a big reason for that is that when people start in the cancel program, right, the skipper is always a cancel 2. Makes sense, right? So as a cancel 1, you're the crew, and the cancel 2 is the skipper. Once you go on to be a cancel 2, now you're the skipper, and the cancel 1s are your crew. When you go into cancel 3, usually the cancel 4 will become the skipper, and you're as a cancel 3 will become the crew. The whole idea, the whole principle, the whole thing that this reinforces is whoever's better is always the skipper, right? Which makes sense, like, right, you don't want the boat to crash, you don't want everyone to get injured, so you'll put the more competent sailor as the skipper. This reinforces a notion from all these sailors from a very young age that if you are the skipper, you are better, and if you're the crew, it's because you're garbage, right? The crew is garbage, and the skipper is good. And that creates a whole dynamic where it's like every decision, everything is taken care of the skipper, and the crew is, I mean, there's no other way to say this, is the boat bitch. That's it. You as a crew are just there because the skipper allows you to be there, right? Allows you to like be alive, and you're replaceable. And every time anything goes wrong, it's your fault because you're an idiot. A good skipper would have the same results of any crew, so you're literally worthless. You're literally just dead weight that just pulls on ropes. How do you think that creates a good team? That's not even a team, though. You're like, oh, but that's not a good team. It's not even, that's not a team. If you think that's a team, then you've obviously never accomplished anything in your life. So that's obviously not a team. So you have to, especially if you're a race coach, although this should apply from any level, but if you're a race coach, you need to acknowledge that this is a subconscious belief that all of these sailors have. You need to break that right away. So there's two ways you break that. One of them is you very clearly differentiate the roles of the skipper and the crew. Because up until this point, the crew does everything, and the skipper does everything, and the crew just does what the skipper tells them to do. You need to get to the point where there's a very specific role that the skipper fulfills and a very specific role that the crew fulfills, and there is no overlap of any kind, right? Now, who usually makes all the upwind tactical decisions and strategic decisions? Usually the skipper, right? Again, because the skipper has this mindset of I'm better, I'm smarter, that's why I'm the skipper, I'm going to choose, I'm not going to trust you. That is the first thing you have to break. That's the first habit you have to break. Every single tactical decision and strategic decision on the upwind has to be carried out and decided by the crew. Only by the crew. And you're like, oh, that's ridiculous. That as a skipper, first of all, I don't trust my crew. My crew's not as smart as me. Why would he be making or she be making all the decisions that are really important on the upwind? Well, first of all, if you actually believe that as a skipper, then you're a bad skipper. You are trash as a skipper if you believe that. I'm going to be really honest, okay? Your job as a skipper is to go faster than everyone else in a straight line. We're talking about specifically upwinds right now, by the way. In a straight line, your focus, your only purpose in life is to be faster than everyone else. In a straight line. That's it. There's nothing else. So let me ask you something. Every second as a skipper, you're looking upwind, or you're looking at other boats, or you're looking at a wind line, or you're looking at anything, you're looking at the mark. Are you focusing 100% on going faster in a straight line? You're not. If you think you are so stupid. You're an actual idiot. Okay? You're so arrogant, and you're delusional. And you're a dumbass. Okay? If you want to get really good at doing one thing, the only way to do that is by just doing that one thing. If you think you can be the best at doing this while doing something different, you're delusional. You're literally delusional. You have no idea what you're talking about. You have some water. Thanks, bro. You literally have no freaking idea what you're talking about, and you're stupid, and you probably failed school, and I would honestly seriously doubt if you knew how to fucking read, because you probably can't fucking read. Thanks, bro. So if you can't fucking read, why the fuck would we listen to you? Like, genuinely. Why would I listen to an illiterate skipper, which is what you are? So, your goal as a skipper is to go in a straight line as fast as possible. Faster than everyone else. And you're like, oh, but that's easy. I can do it with my eyes blind. Okay, yeah, you can do that with your eyes closed. Again, you're not listening. If you're an idiot and you have no idea how to go fast in a straight line, if you actually understood everything that was involved in going fast in a straight line, you would realize, holy shit, this is a full-time job. This is a full-time job. And you should get to the point where you get upset with your crew, not because they made a mistake, but because they're not focusing on their job, which is taking away from you doing your... Like, you have to tell your crew at one point, like, listen, I'm doing everything I can to keep the bow connected to the waves, to properly determine what kind of wave set is coming to me, because that's another thing we'll talk about. There's different types of waves, and you sail through different types of waves in different ways. What kind of leech tension I need, which changes, by the way, every few seconds. What kind of helm I have, because you always need to have your neutral helm, although there are exceptions to this. So all these things require your attention all the time. And let's say we're like, okay, but yeah, I still think I'm better at fear tactics, so I still want to look outside the boat. It's like, okay, you have these two boats right here. Right, this is you, you're a fucking idiot, and this is someone here who's not an idiot. In this boat, the skipper does nothing but look ahead, look at the ticklers, look at the leech, right? And feels the helm of the boat, feels the bounce of the boat. That's it. Nothing else. Nothing else. You in this boat are doing, or sorry, you're not doing that. You're trying to do all that, plus looking upwind, plus looking at boats, plus this, plus that, plus that. This boat will naturally just inch faster and faster and faster because they're focused on making fewer and fewer mistakes on straight line boat speed. Whereas you, every time you look away, your inattention is causing you a bit of loss of speed. Every time you look away, you're not focusing on going straight line boat speed. So this boat will just be faster than you. Now, it might not make a big difference over the course of one boat length, but over the course of a 1 hour and a half race, a 1 hour race, yeah, that will be like 20 boat lengths. And you'll be like, I guess we lost because you didn't, because you're blaming your crew, because that's what you do, right? You're like, I told you, you put us, they went in the wind, we didn't go in the wind because of you. Or you fucked up that tack location, you're such an idiot. The real reason why you guys lost by 20 boat lengths was not because your crew, it was because you were slower than the other boat, which is your fault as a skipper. So you need to start taking responsibility for that. Right. So, as a coach, you need to make sure you differentiate these roles very aggressively. Because one, this will do two things. One, both sailors in the boat will now become a valuable member of the team. Right? It's no longer I'm the skipper, I'm the god, and you're my boat bitch. It's more like I have my job, which I will do to the very best that I can. You have your job that you will do the very best that you can, and we will work together as a team to win. It's no longer now, I told you to do this, you did it wrong, blah, 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 you didn't do it fast enough. That is childish, and you're never going to win like that. And you'll also have a horrible time sailing if you do that, because no crew's going to be happy in that position, because they'll be like, this sucks, I hate my crew. Or I hate my skipper. And the skipper is not going to have fun because it's like, you're in a if you want to sail like that, sail a fucking laser. If you want to be a total dumbass douchebag, sail a laser. Then you'll deal with your own shit, but you'll probably still blame people. You'll probably still be like, oh, but then this other boat did this. This other boat did that. Whatever. Like, honestly, who has time for these kind of people? So, right. So as a coach, you need to differentiate these roles very clearly. Now, obviously, the question is, what is the crew's role? The crew's role is to obviously help keep the boat flat. But two is to look upwind all the time and to never stop talking. So remember, the skipper now, their full-time job is to go as fast as possible in a straight line, which is actually hard. It actually is hard because it requires so much focus, and everything changes every few seconds. Like literally every few seconds, the entire balance of the boat has changed. Like you have to adjust, like it's insane the amount of things you have to change every few seconds. It's relentless. It just never ends. Right? And sometimes you just don't know if you really are doing the best thing. You don't know. You don't know, am I pointing as high as I can or am I going as fast as I can? You don't know. Like, unless you're like someone who's been sailing nonstop for like 40 years, you can smell the wind and you can like feel the boat speed in your freaking, whatever, then it does cause a lot of stress and anxiety and self-doubt. So you as a crew need to pretty much create an environment where you calm your skipper down. And people are calm when there's no unknown. People get stressed out when there's an unknown. This is literally, everybody knows this. When there's unknowns, people get anxious about that. And again, if you're like, oh, that's not true, I'm very comfortable with unknowns. No, you're not. You're actually not. If you say that, it's probably just because there's nothing in your life that it can go bad. It's probably because like all your bills are getting paid by someone else. But if it's like, let's say you had like a responsibility and you had kids and you had a wife and you had a house and you generally didn't know how you were going to pay your mortgage next month, you did not know where that money's going to come from. Like you just didn't know. It was a full unknown. Trust me, you're going to be pretty stressed out. You're not going to be having a good time. But if you know what's going to happen, you might still be stressed out, but at least you can do something about it. You can proactively work towards fixing whatever the problem is. Or you might just not be stressed out because you know it'll be okay. But if you have no idea what's going to happen, you're going to be stressed. You're going to be stressed out. Okay? And if you're telling me that that's not you, it's because you're dumb. Like it's because you're stupid. And you don't have any self-awareness of any kind. So, yes. So as a crew, you need to make sure you fill in your skipper's mind with all the information they need to be like, I'm okay. Everything's okay. I'm going to be okay. You're literally your skipper's therapist. No jokes. You're literally your skipper's therapist, which means your skipper should never be surprised by where boats are. They should never attack and then see 3 boats cross them. But like, what? Where did these boats come from? Again, if he knows, like, hey, we're going to attack, 3 boats are going to cross us, he might be disappointed, but he'll be like, okay. But also, that shouldn't be a surprise either. He should be knowing that. He shouldn't be like, hey, we're doing great. Oh, by the way, if we attack, these boats are going to cross us. Your skipper would be like, what? Why the fuck did you not tell me this? What the hell have you been doing for the past 5 minutes? You know, why? Because you didn't share him the unknown. He doesn't like these surprises. He doesn't like these unknowns. So you need to literally never stop talking. As a crew, you should literally never shut the fuck up. Now, will this be extremely annoying? Absolutely. Why? Because you're going to be really bad at it. You know, you're going to be really bad. You're going to say a lot of stupid things. You're going to annoy your skipper. But how are you supposed to get better? Like, genuinely. If you just don't talk, and you just wait until you say the right thing, you're never going to say the right thing because you have no practice, right? But let's say you never shut up. You talk 24/7. You very quickly are going to be making so many mistakes. You're going to be hearing yourself talk and be like, that was useless. That was pointless. I need to say that. That pissed off my skipper. Blah, blah, blah. That was not beneficial to us improving. You're going to have so much feedback to yourself that eventually your communication is going to get dialed way quicker than anyone else, right? The sailor who is too afraid of talking and sound like an idiot is going to keep sounding like an idiot 3 months from now. If you bite that bullet and you work with your skipper and you acknowledge to your skipper, hey, I'm just never going to stop talking, but you agree why. If you both agree like, yes, I do not want you to ever stop talking because there is a huge benefit to this. The benefit is that you will get really good at communicating information to me. You will get really good at relaying to me the reality of the race. I will start feeling a lot better and a lot safer, and I'll be able to focus more on my job of straight belaying boat speed. And also, this is another really important thing, is your skipper will begin to trust you as a crew. Most of the time, skippers do not want crews to make any decisions. It's because, again, they have this reinforced idea that you are shit and you are garbage. So they don't trust anything you say. But let's say you never stop talking. And that means you literally share every thought out loud. Eventually, your skipper will start to understand how you think and will start trusting your decisions, right? If you say, we should tack here, your skipper probably thinks, okay, well, first of all, you're a fucking idiot, so we should not tack there. Second of all, because you're an idiot, you don't think, so we should not tack there. Third of all, because you're an idiot, you don't even understand where the frickin' wind is, so we should not. So literally, because your skipper thinks you are so dumb, he will never want to listen to anything you say. And if you made a decision, it's like, hey, we should tack here, he is going to look around to make sure he agrees. which means because you didn't communicate with him, you now fucking slowed up the whole boat because your skipper is losing his time looking around, trying to see where the wind is, rather than focusing on a straight line. Your skipper should trust you so much that when you say we should tack here, he's like, of course. If you say we should tack here, it's because we should tack here. How do you build that trust? Genuinely. And this honestly pisses me off because so many people don't understand this. You know, even in relationships. People don't understand, like, I mean, in a romantic relationship. Do you know how you build trust in a romantic relationship? You communicate. Why would that help? Well, we acknowledge, let's say you and I start dating each other. We don't know each other. We know each other a little bit. We both know, unless you're an idiot, unless you're a naive idiot, which by the way is not a good thing, we both know that the other person has a lot of things going on in their head that we don't know about. And we also know that the other person has the capacity to hurt us, has the capacity to lie, has the capacity to be manipulative, all these things. But we trust each other, right? We're like, I know that you're full of snakes and you can hurt me. And you know that I'm full of snakes and you can hurt me. But we're going to make a deal here that we're going to show up for each other or whatever. But you still have to build that trust. You don't want to just rely on, hey, I choose to trust you. You want to get to the point where you're like, no, I actually trust my partner. When someone says, oh, but this, but that, it's like, I'm sorry, I trust my partner so much. So how do you build that trust? You build that trust by communicating so much, by making your interior life so understood by your partner that they have very little to worry about anymore. If anything, they have nothing to worry about because it's like, well, I know what kind of thought process my partner has. I know what they believe. I know what their values are. I know what they think. I know what certain situations make them feel. I know what they like. I know what they don't like. Eventually, you get to know your partner so well that you just know what they'll do, rather than the unknown of like, if this happens, what will my partner do? If this happens, what will my partner do? And then you're scared because you're unknown. But if you communicate everything, if you communicate every single little thing, eventually your partner is not going to be stressed anymore. They're going to actually trust you because they'll know you. Same thing on a boat. You have to communicate so excessively, so nonstop, that your skipper trusts you because he understands everything about you. He understands how you think. He understands why you came to a decision. And that should always be the case. For example, you're on an upwind as a crew. You're saying, okay, first of all, you should be like, okay, our pointing is good. Our speed is good. No one's catching up. We're matching boat speed. That's the very first thing you should do. You need to constantly be telling your skipper if their speed is good and if their pointing is good. Because if their speed is not good, they don't know. It might be pretty good, but it just might not be. There might be that little bit that's missing, right? Or they might have their boat set up not optimally, and they're sailing along, but because they're so focused on going a straight line, not looking at the boats, they don't know. You should be telling them, hey, our pointing is really good, but our speed is not good. They'll adjust right away to get speed good, and they'll be like, okay, speed is good, then the skipper will head back up to pointing. You constantly need to be working with your skipper so that you can optimize their focus on straight line boat speed. And so that's the first thing, right? Your skipper needs to be able to focus purely on his straight line boat speed because he knows that if something goes wrong, you will tell him. Not 5 minutes down the road, immediately. But the only way he knows that is if you do it over and over again. If you show your skipper that you nonstop will communicate to him on how his boat speed is and how his pointing is, he won't be asking you anymore. He'll just know that my boat speed is good and my pointing is good because my crew tells me every 5 seconds. And yes, it should be every 5 seconds. It literally should be non-stop. Because if you do it every 30 seconds, then that means my 20 seconds might have gone by where you guys are going slow. And trust me, your skipper's going to be really mad at you if that's the case. Like really upset with you that you allowed the boat to be slow for 20 seconds. And so now they also don't trust you. Now they're going to start looking around because like, well, if we're going slow, my crew's not going to tell me because my crew's a dumbass. So I have to look around. Now, while your skipper's looking around, he's not focusing on going a straight line, the boat's slower, and now you as a team are losing. Why? Just because as a crew, you didn't want to sound like an idiot and you felt uncomfortable talking nonstop. So you need to break out of that habit. Yeah, you need to break out of the habits. You need to talk nonstop. And the other thing you have to talk about is you have to talk about every single boat, all the time, what they're doing, where everyone's going. Why do you think they're doing that? Right? Nothing should be a surprise that, hey, oh, by the way, when we tacked, there's boats all the way to the right that are crossing us. It's like, well, how did you? I should have known that. You should say, like, okay, so we're going this way. All these boats are going this way. There's a few boats that are tacking away going there. I don't know why they're doing it. They don't seem lifted. We all seem to be, uh, you know, equally on the same angle towards the mark. I don't see any dark air over there, so I don't know why they're doing that. Maybe they're just doing that to get out of bad air. Okay, you've pretty much covered everything that can happen, so your skipper knows. And then, but you keep looking at it. As actually, there, I can see them trapezing now. There actually is more wind over there. And then you discuss with each other, what should we do? Is that too far away to try to get into that breeze? By the time we get there, will the breeze be gone? What do we see over here? Like literally, you should not stop talking. And if you don't know what to talk about, just don't stop talking. Say, hey, I'm seeing a dark patch here. I'm seeing some ripples there. I think it's moving this way. I think that's moving that way. I'm looking at the boats. Those boats over there are lifted. Those boats are not. Like literally, non-stop talking. And while you're talking, also this has to be out loud. This has to be out loud because your skipper has to be involved in your thought process. Again, this is how you build trust. But also, it keeps them calm, right? If you talk like this out loud, your skipper can kind of focus on what they're doing. But if you're not talking out loud, they're not like, hey, are you doing your job? Your skipper's going to be like, are you actually keeping us in the wind? Are you actually keeping us in the lift attack? Are you actually focusing on what other boats are doing? If you're not, you might be doing that. But if you're saying it in your head, your skipper's going to start doubting you and is going to start doing your job for you. And now the boat's going slow. So you cannot let that happen. And you have to communicate to make sure that does not happen. Out loud, 24/7. You should never stop talking. And also, when you make your decision, your skipper understands why you made the decision, right? It's not like, hey, why should we go to the right? It's more like, okay, yes, well, my crew's been saying about how all these things, he's been talking for the past minute and a half about everything he's seeing. So yes, according to everything he's seeing, I agree we should go to the right. So that means when you say we should attack, your skipper's 100% on board and is not checking around. They might just do like quick checks just to make sure they're not, their room is good to tack. Although even that, the crew should be saying, hey, there's no boats to check, and you just go for tack. And you say, like, hey, there's a boat here, you might have to duck, or you might have to cross pretty close. You need to check to make sure you know what to do, what to commit to, either the duck or the cross, right? But if there's no boats around, you're going to say there's no boats anywhere near you, just go for the tack. And because you talk so much, they should trust you and they should just go for the tack. So, so that non-stop communication is important. The skipper will understand why you came to a certain decision because you spoke about your thought process for the past minute or 30 seconds or 20 seconds or 2 minutes, doesn't matter. So you guys are always working as a team now. And eventually, the skipper will come to trust every decision you make, which will allow him or her to focus more intensely on their job, on going on a straight line, because they don't worry. Even if there's a moment of quiet because something's happening, they know you're taking care of everything. And so then their focus can increase in the straight line boat speed, which means the whole boat will start going faster and faster and faster, which means your tactical decisions as a crew will become better, right? No tactician looks more brilliant than a tactician on a fast boat, right? If you're the best tactician on earth, but you're on a slow boat, every decision you make is a stupid decision, right? Because you can't exploit any decision because you're slow. If you are on the fastest boat, every tactical decision you make is like genius because you have the speed to pull it off, right? You have the speed to take advantage of the lift or whatever it's going on. Nothing good comes from a slow boat. There's no good communication because you guys are all upset. There's no teamwork because you guys don't trust each other. No one's having fun because you're always losing. So again, your role as a crew is so critical to make sure your skipper can focus on the pillar, which is going fast in a straight line. Okay? And I guess we might as well start talking about how we do that. So first things first, you should never be using your rudder. Let's talk about how you go fast in a straight line. You should never, ever, 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 ever be using your rudder. Okay? Does your rudder turn your boat? No. Your rudder does not turn your boat. Your rudder is a brake. That's it. Your rudder doesn't do anything but slow you down. Okay? You really need to acknowledge that. Okay? If you're sailing along like this, right? This is my ballast, my stern sailing along, and I have my rudder like this, right? If I'm going straight, okay, this flow overboards. If I put the rudder off to the side like this, all I'm doing is creating turbulence, right? If you put some rudder on and you look behind at the rudder, you'll see like white water. You'll see like these little vortexes, these little like water tornadoes. That's not fast. Those are literally suction cups or drag, increased drag, slowing you down. The reason why it's turning your boat though is because the drag is concentrated on one side of the boat, which means one side of the boat slows down, which makes the faster side of the boat rotate around it, right? The greater drag is concentrated on one side of the boat, so the faster side of the boat is going to rotate around the slower side of the boat. So every time you turn, it is because, when you use the rudder, it is because you've slowed down part of your boat, and that's causing your boat to rotate around the slower part. So using the rudder is a brake. That's it. That is it. There's nothing else to it. That's it. When I used to train my sailors, we would do rudderless sailing almost all the time. To get to the point where you just don't even, your rudder is just a feedback loop. Your rudder is your boat's way of communicating to you what the helm is. The rudder is just a very quick way of the boat telling you you're in neutral helm, you're in weather helm, or you're in lee helm. And you should always be in neutral helm with some exceptions. Okay? There are like almost exceptions to like literally every single rule in sailing. But yeah, for now, you just should always be on neutral helm. You should never be using the rudder. The rudder should just be lightly in your hand. And you should start feeling like, oh, it's pulling or it's pushing, which means something is out of balance. And you should fix it right away so that you go right back into a balanced neutral helm. That's the first thing. So as a skipper, you should never be using the rudder. Now, let's talk about what's the easiest way to go in a straight line is a flat boat. A flat boat goes in a straight line. That's it. Okay? Every time your boat heels, everyone knows this, your boat will either have weather or lee helm, will either head up or bear off. Okay? Now, let's also go over why. Why does heel make you turn your boat? Right? Again, this is where a lot of coaches will come up with a bunch of random reasons. It's like, oh, because the CE and CLR are no longer aligned, blah, 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 blah. It actually comes down to your bow wave. Your bow wave is the reason that heel turns your boat. So I do not have a boat with me right now. But let's say I use my two hands, that this is the bow. If the bow is perfectly flat, going through the water like this, it will create a bow wave on both sides of the bow that are the exact same strength or height. Makes sense, right? Because it's the exact same angle of the bow pushing through the water, creating a bow wave on both sides that are the exact same, that apply the same pressure on the boat. Let's say I heel the boat like this now. There is now a lot more surface area on, in this case, the port side of the bow. I think it might be flipped because this is like a camera. So actually, I'm not going to use port and starboard then, because if it's flipped, that's going to make no sense. This side of the bow now is deeper in the water, has more surface area hitting the water, creates a bigger bow wave than this side of the bow, because it's more out of the water, there's less surface area. This greater bow wave literally pushes against the bow this way. We gotta go? Yeah. Okay, so that's it for now. I will talk to you soon. All right, see you guys.